it's Ryan. Welcome back to another week of What's for Dinners. This week I am cooking out of the Rachel Ray Fall in Season magazine. For those of you that are new here, my name is Ryan. I am a full-time working mom. Typically I work outside the home, but I'm currently working from home. My husband and I live here in the suburbs of Chicago, and we have an 8-month-old son. I make these What's for Dinner videos once a week. I'd like to try recipes out of some magazines that I receive or cookbooks, and I like to make a few just so I can give you guys a review of the recipes as well as the book or magazines. So as I mentioned, this week we are cooking out of the Rachel Ray In Season magazine. We are making a chicken soup with cheesy tortilla crisps. We are making a fig and fontina Monte Cristo sandwich. We are making bacon tartlets with apple and cheddar. And finally, we are making chicken with pears and polenta. The chicken with pears and polenta is actually what we are making tonight. So let me go ahead and show you guys the magazine, the recipe we're using, as well as the ingredients that you will need to make this one. All right, here we go. Okay, so here is the magazine that we're cooking out of this week. It's the Rachel Ray In Season Fall Edition. If you guys haven't picked up this magazine yet, you definitely should. It is beautiful. I actually like it much better than the old Rachel Ray Everyday magazine, so give this a try if you haven't. And then this is the recipe we're cooking tonight, the chicken with pears and polenta. So here is what you guys are gonna need for this one. To start with, you're gonna need chicken. I'm doing thin sliced chicken breast. I always find they cook better because they're not so thick, so you know, one end doesn't get burned before the outside, or super tough before the kind of thicker part is cooked. You're gonna dredge that in just regular all-purpose flour, as well as some ground sage and some thyme. The fats you'll need to cook with are extra virgin olive oil as well as butter. Then to go alongside the chicken, you're gonna make a sort of pear with sauce. So I have 2 pears that are hopefully ripe enough. I actually, a tip for you guys is if you're something like pears aren't ripe, I threw them in a paper bag with a banana that was very ripe and let them sit for a couple days, and they are definitely riper than they were, although they probably could stand to be a little riper. You need some white wine. I wouldn't have opened a bottle of wine for this, but we happen to have one sort of in mid-use, so I will go ahead and use that for this recipe. You need either balsamic vinegar, or I have this balsamic glaze that I'll use. You need shallots or red onions. I happen to have shallots, so I will use those, as well as fresh thyme, which I happen to have on hand, so I will use, and some brown sugar. Then to go alongside the chicken and pears, it calls for a polenta, which I've actually only made a few times in my life, so I'm excited to try that. I'm excited to see if my husband enjoys it. He loves like cream of wheat type stuff, so this is sort of similar. I am going to be making this like grits, so I'm going to reconstitute it and make it into grits. You can cut polenta into kind of slices and fry them off that way, but I'm going to do the grits variety. Rachel claims that she likes hers best when the liquid used to reconstitute is chicken broth and milk, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then it says to kind of flavor the grits, you're going to add some camembert as well as some baby spinach, and then a little bit of nutmeg as well. Now to go alongside that with for my husband, excuse me, I am going to, I have a couple leftover corn muffins, so I'm going to go ahead and serve these corn muffins to him because I'm not sure he's going to be crazy about the polenta, so I wanted him to have some sort of starch. So that is what is going to be tonight's dinner. I am going to go ahead and get started turning this into chicken with pears and polenta. I'm actually really excited about this one. I will let you guys know what I end up thinking. All right, let's get moving. Okay, the first thing you're going to do for this recipe is prep your chicken. You're going to put 3/4 cup of flour into a shallow dish, and then you're going to mix in 1 teaspoon each of the thyme and ground sage. You then want to mix that flour mixture and dredge your chicken breasts on both sides with the flour mixture. Once it's coated, you're going to put 3 tablespoons of olive oil into a pan, and then put your chicken into the pan on medium-high heat and cook it on both sides until they're brown for about 3 minutes per side. While that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and start preparing the pears. You're going to want to chop up 2 ripe pears. Quarter them first and then slice them thinly. Next up, you're gonna chop your shallots. Next up, you want to prepare your fresh thyme. To do this, just slide the leaves backwards against the stem and you'll release the leaves without getting any of the stem. You're going to then want to chop this up, about 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme leaves. Next up, I got started on the polenta. I'm not going to lie, guys, the polenta was a little bit of a struggle, so I don't know that I would take my own advice on this because I'm not sure the consistency turned out. But in any event, you're going to take 3 cups of a cooking liquid. I used half milk and half chicken stock, as I mentioned earlier. You're going to want to bring that to a boil over medium-high heat, and then later we'll add the polenta. Once your chicken is browned on both sides, pull that out of the pan. You're then going to add 3 tablespoons of butter and then put your pear, shallots, and thyme mixture into the pan over medium-high heat. You'll want to partially cover the skillet and cook until the pears and onions soften for about 5 minutes. Next up, I went back to the polenta. I started by chopping 1 cup of camembert cheese. I then coarsely chopped a bundle of fresh spinach leaves. That's what the recipe calls for, a bundle. Next, it was back to the pear mixture. I added a half a cup of white wine and stirred that, cooking until the wine was absorbed for about a minute. I then added 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of balsamic drizzle. I mixed that up until it was stirred and then added my chicken back to the pan, flipping it over so it was coated in the sauce. Back to the polenta now. I added my polenta to this mixture. I think maybe I had the wrong kind of polenta. I thought this was quick cooking, but maybe not because it didn't really break down properly. In any event, I added the camembert, spinach, as well as salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg to taste. You're going to want to cook this until it thickens for about 4 to 5 minutes. As I mentioned, mine never thickened up appropriately, so I ended up serving it almost like grit style in little ramekins, alongside the chicken with pears. The chicken with pears were delicious, the polenta was not. Hey guys, it's Ryan. Welcome back to another night of this week's What's for Dinner. As you guys know, this week we are cooking out of the Rachel Ray in Season magazine. It is the fall issue. Tonight we're going to be making an apple, cheddar, and bacon tartlet. I'm actually really excited about this. I think my husband and I are both going to like this. So let me go ahead and show you guys the recipe, the ingredients, and then what I'm going to make alongside it. I can't wait for this one. Okay guys, as you definitely know by now, we are cooking out of this Rachel Ray in Season magazine. And here is the recipe, if you even want to call it that, for the apple, bacon, and cheddar tartlet, as well as some photos of these tartlet ideas. This is almost more of an idea than a recipe in particular, but it sounded like a great idea to me, so it totally suckered me in. So for this recipe, you are going to need these ingredients. You're going to need some puff pastry and then flour to roll it out, as well as egg. I assume you're going to do an egg wash on top to help brown up the pastry. And then for the filling, quote unquote, that's going to go in this one, you're going to need bacon, some apples. I have Honeycrisp because I feel like they have the best flavor, as well as some cheddar. I went ahead and sprang for the good cheddar because there are so few ingredients here. And then you're also going to need sugar and salt and, oh, hold please. You will also need fresh rosemary. Since there were so few ingredients in this one, I actually sprang for fresh rosemary, as well as good cheddar, because I feel like since when you have few ingredients, the ingredients really are the all-stars of the dish, as opposed to like the preparation and the flavors working together. So you want to make sure you have really good high quality ingredients, which is why I sprung for 2 fancier things than I normally probably wouldn't have. I am going to serve this alongside this kale chopped salad. It has Brussels sprouts, kale, Parmesan, croutons, radicchio, and Asiago cheese with a lemon garlic vinaigrette. That looks fantastic to me. I almost might be as excited for that chopped salad kit as I am for these tartlets. So it's not often that I make food that I think like this is going to be a winning dish, but this is one of them, which honestly makes me a little bit nervous because I feel like I'm setting myself up for failure. But I will, of course, give you guys my review after the dinner. And in the meantime, let's stop blabbing and start making dinner. All right, first up on this recipe was preparing the puff pastry. You're going to roll out the puff pastry until the sheet is 10 by 12 inches. You're then going to cut that into smaller rectangles that are 3 by 5 inches. I don't know if my puff pastry wasn't thawed enough, but it really didn't seem to want to roll out. So I just kind of cut it into rectangles that frankly were the size the sheet was in the start. You're then going to want to score smaller rectangles into this and then use your fork to poke holes in where you scored the smaller rectangle, leaving about a 1/2 inch border. The idea behind this is that where you've poked the holes with your fork is not going to raise the same way the rest of the rectangles are, so you'll have kind of a indent in them to put your filling. Spoiler alert, this didn't really work. I did some surgery and got some kind of indents in on my own, but it didn't do what the recipe said. You're going to want to cook these for 15 minutes at 375 degrees. Don't forget to add your egg wash to the top. The song of the night was Train's Meet Virginia. I've been on a train kick recently and enjoying every minute of it. While your puff pastries are cooking, you're going to get your bacon into a pan and get that cooked. You're then going to want to peel and chop your apples. I used Honeycrisp because they're my favorite kind of apples and I always have those on hand. After you slice your apples, you're going to want to prepare your fresh rosemary. Like the thyme, the easiest way to deal with this is pull the leaves backwards against the stem and you'll release the leaves. You then want to chop this up pretty fine so that you're not chomping on a big bite of rosemary. After that, my bacon was done, so I got that out of the pan. I then added the apples to the pan that the bacon had cooked in. Don't drain the grease, use that to cook your apples. I added some salt and a pinch of sugar to the apples and cooked them for a couple minutes. I actually ended up adding a little bit of olive oil to the pan. Because I used turkey bacon, I didn't think there was enough grease to really get these apples softening properly. So if you guys use turkey bacon, consider adding a little olive oil to your apples. Next up, we needed to grate some cheddar cheese. My husband jumped in here. He is the official grater of this household, so I was happy for the help tonight. After the tarts came out of the oven, I set about stuffing them. As you can see, they were a little bit bangled and didn't come out as pretty as the pictures showed, but in any event, they tasted great, so I would definitely try this recipe again and figure out what I did wrong in terms of the center part not raising. So to stuff these, first I added some grated cheddar cheese. I then added my cooked apples, a sprinkle of thyme. I kept these just on some that I was eating because I didn't think my husband would like that. I then added some of the turkey bacon that I just crumbled over the top, and then I added just a sprinkling more of cheddar cheese to the top of these. Then it was back into the oven for 5 to 7 more minutes to melt the cheese and make sure everything was hot. Once these came out of the oven, I served them alongside that kale salad that I showed you guys earlier. I have to say these tasted absolutely fantastic and I can't wait to try them again to perfect them. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of this week's What's for Dinner. As you guys know, we are cooking out of the Rachel Ray In Season magazine this week. Tonight we are making a chicken soup recipe with cheesy tortillas on the side. It looks super simple, which is great because I have an incredibly busy work day and I'm not going to have a ton of time, but this looks like one of those drop in the pot and kind of cook soups, so it should be perfect to accommodate my day. Let me go ahead and show you guys the recipes as well as what you are going to need to get started on this one. Okay guys, as you know, this is the magazine we're cooking out of, And this one, this cheesy chicken soup with cheesy tortilla crisps, is the recipe that we are making tonight. Okay, so for this one, you will need these ingredients. I am taking a shortcut. I got a rotisserie chicken and just picked it apart. I'm using the white meat for this chicken, so I will just dump this in at the very last second. I think the actual recipe calls for chicken thighs. You'd probably get a little bit more flavor out of that. But for me, this is going to be a super simple sort of hack for this recipe. You're also going to need carrots, some frozen corn, and then you will need a can of black beans, and then the base of the soup is chicken broth and actually just a jar of salsa. To garnish the soup, you're going to need some avocado and some radishes, and then to go alongside, you're going to make some cheesy tortillas. I'm actually so excited about this. So I have a 3-cheese Mexican blend as well as some corn tortillas, and then you need some oil for that too. So this looks incredibly simple, and I'm actually really excited about the flavors. I think this one's going to be a good one. All right, let's get started. All right, for this recipe, the first thing I ended up doing was prepping my carrots. I peeled these and then chopped them. If you were going to start with your chicken thighs, the first thing you would want to do would be to cook your chicken thighs according to the recipe. As I mentioned, I'm using rotisserie chicken, so I skipped that step. While I was chopping, I also chopped up the garnishes, which were the radishes and the avocado for the side. Next up, I added some olive oil to the pan and then added the carrots just to start them softening. The actual recipe just had you putting the carrots in with the cooking liquid, but I wanted to make sure mine were nice and soft, so I started cooking those a little bit early. After that, I added my chicken stock to the pan. This was 4 cups of chicken stock or broth, whatever you're using. After adding the chicken stock to the pan, I added my salsa. I used a whole jar of chunky red salsa that I showed you guys earlier, but the actual recipe calls for just a cup of salsa. Once you got all this into the pan and gave it a stir, I got started on my tortillas. I added some corn tortillas to a baking sheet and brushed these with olive oil. I then got the tortillas into a 400-degree oven and cooked them for 10 minutes until they were golden on both sides. The music for tonight was John Mayer's Rosie. It was now back to the soup. I added my shredded rotisserie chicken and gave that a good stir. After that, I added my frozen corn kernels as well as the black beans that I had already drained. Gave that a good stir and made sure everything was heated through. Back to the corn tortillas, I flipped these over and then added some Mexican cheese to the top. I then got these back into the oven and baked them for about 4 more minutes until the cheese was bubbly. These corn tortilla dipper things were absolutely fantastic. I'd never thought to make something like this alongside a soup, and it really honestly made the soup 10 times better. I definitely liked the soup recipe, but the highlight for me was the corn tortilla dippers. I will try this again in a new soup recipe. Next up, we have a bonus recipe, a fig and fontina Monte Cristo. For those of you that have never tried the Monte Cristo before, it's basically a fancy grilled cheese that has kind of like an egg coating. So the first thing you're going to do is put 2 eggs into a bowl and whip that up with some ground mustard and salt and pepper. You're then going to add your egg mixture to a well-buttered pan. Next up, prep your bread slices by spreading one side of them with some fig jam. You're then going to put the bread into the egg mixture, fig jam side up, and then you're going to put some fontina cheese onto the top of the fig mixture. I added a cover to this to help the cheese melt a little bit quicker. Once the cheese had melted and the eggs were cooked, I flipped the sandwich so that the cheese was facing each other and you had a sandwich shape. Then I served this alongside some kale salad, and this was a super, super delicious, super simple weeknight dinner, so don't sleep on a Monte Cristo sandwich if you think it's only for ordering out at restaurants. It's not. If you guys liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below. I'm back every Wednesday with another What's for Dinner video, and I hope to see you guys back sometime soon.